We have lots to go through today with triangles, as we're going to identify the different types of triangles, we're going to learn to classify triangles, and we're going to be able to find the missing measures in triangles. First, we have to know what a triangle is. A triangle is a closed figure made of 3 line segments that meet only at their endpoints. You can use this triangle as your example. It has 3 line segments, and they only meet at each of the endpoints, here, here, and here. We're going to take a look at this triangle and the angles in the triangle. If I take angle A, angle B, angle C out of the triangle and place all their vertices together on a straight line, I find that in adding them together, if I put A plus B plus C, they make a straight line. Since they make a straight line, I know that A plus B plus C has to equal 180 degrees. So that means in this triangle that all the angles in a triangle have to equal 180 degrees. And this tells me that if I know angles A and B, I can use them to find C. So if angle A equals 30 degrees and angle B equals 90 degrees, and I don't know the measure of angle C, I can take 90 plus 30, which gives me 120. And since I know that altogether this has to equal 180, I can take the 180 total degrees, subtract the 120 degrees from angles A and B, and I get 60 degrees. So I know angle C has to equal 60 degrees. Okay, you're going to want to go back to your vocabulary for this one. An equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle is a triangle with all equal sides. You want to write this down in your vocabulary, and then you can draw the picture that matches with it once we find it on here. There's also a section in your notes that looks just like this. You'll have to go through and fill out those classifications as well. Alright, so an equilateral triangle is a triangle with all equal sides. To know that all the sides are equal, we use these little congruency symbols here. So because this side is equal to this side and this side, I know that this is an equilateral triangle. A scalene triangle is a triangle with no congruent sides. Because it has no congruent sides, it also has no congruent angles. So if I look at my triangles, and notice it says it has a triangle with no congruent sides. That means this is a classification based on sides. And this triangle here has no congruent sides, so we call it a scalene triangle. The isosceles triangle is the last classification we use to classify a triangle by its sides. This is a triangle with 2 congruent sides. Because it has 2 congruent sides, it also has 2 congruent angles. To help me remember this, I think of the word isosceles. It has the word I in the front. You have 2 eyes on your head, and an isosceles triangle has 2 congruent sides. Again, we see the congruency marks here that tell us that this side is congruent to this side, but because there's no marks here, this side is not congruent to the other 2. Making this an isosceles triangle. Now we're going to move on to classifying triangles by their angle measures. You already know what it means to be an acute angle, a right angle, and an obtuse angle. So we use these words to help us classify triangles as well. An obtuse triangle is a triangle with one obtuse angle. It can only have one obtuse angle because if it has more, it would be more than 180 degrees, and that can't make a triangle. So if we look here, 50, 50, 80, none of those are obtuse. If we look here, this has 90 degrees here, so neither of these can be obtuse. And if we look at this triangle, it has a nice big obtuse angle right there, so we know that that is an obtuse triangle. A right triangle is a triangle with one right angle. Again, it can only have one right angle because if it has two, that's automatically 180 degrees, and you still have a third angle to account for, making it too big to be a triangle. Right, so we look for our triangle that has a right angle measure, which is right here, so this is a right triangle. And an acute triangle is a triangle with all acute angles. "50, 50, and 80 tells us that this triangle is an acute triangle. And I'd take a second to pause here and go to your notes and make sure to copy this down into your notes. You can start and we will pick up where we left off on the next page. Okay, so now we're going to classify the triangle as an acute triangle, obtuse triangle, or right triangle. But first we have to decide if it's actually a triangle or not. We said that you need 180 degrees to make a triangle. If you have more or less than 180 degrees, it's not a triangle. So the first thing we have to do is we have to add our degrees. So we have 37 plus 53, and that gives us 90, and then I have to do 90 plus 90, which gives me 180. So yes, this can be a triangle because it has a 90-degree angle. We know that this has to be a right triangle. I want you to pause and try the next three on your own, and when you come back, I'll go over the answers with you. All right, now we have number 2. We have 65 degrees, 110 degrees, and 25 degrees. If I add all of these together, so 110 plus 65 gives me 175 degrees. If I add another 25 degrees to that, I'm at 200 degrees. That's a bit more than 180. So this tells me that it doesn't matter what these angle measures are, this cannot be a triangle. For number 3, you have 78 plus 61 gives you 139 degrees. 139 plus 41 gives you 180 degrees. So this can be a triangle. It has no obtuse angles, so it can't be an obtuse triangle. It doesn't have a 90-degree angle, so it can't be a right triangle. All the angles are acute, meaning this is an acute triangle. And last but not least, we have 115 plus 25, which is going to give us 140 degrees, plus the other 40 gives us 180 degrees. So this can be a triangle. It does have one obtuse angle, so it is an obtuse triangle. If you look at the next two problems, it asks you to classify the triangles by their sides. Now remember, when we classify by the sides, it's isosceles, I don't think I spelled that right. Scalene and equilateral. Sorry, this should be an A here. You'll notice it has the word equal in it, so it tells you that it's the triangle with all equal sides. So we have three sides here. None of them are equal, which tells us that this has to be a scalene triangle. Number 6, you have 10 and 10, but this one is 15. So because it only has two equal sides, you know that this has to be an isosceles triangle. All right, so we have two problems here. One asks you to find the missing angle measures, and one asks you to find the measure of the missing side and classify the triangle. What you need to add is that the perimeter of the triangle is 19 inches. You also need to remember your rules about vertical angles and about how many degrees are in a triangle. I'll help you with the first one. The rule of vertical angles tells us that if it is a vertical angle, they're congruent. So because this right angle and this angle are vertical, you know that this angle right here is 90 degrees. This should help you find angles 1 and 2. I want you to do this for homework, and when you come to class on Monday, we'll go over your answers.